This is Room 301, a podcast ran by digital agency group The Digital Maze. Room 301 is a podcast all about SEO, PPC, website design, social media, and everything in between. Our aim with this is to equip marketing leaders with all the know-how to run and lead an effective digital strategy. My name is Rob. Let's get into it.
Right then, so welcome back to Room 301. I think today we're going to talk all about creative content, and we've got just the people for that. So my name's Rob. You all know me. I think you all know Beth as well. Say hello, Beth.
Hi, so today we've got Amy and Pete on. You might know Amy and Pete from Boom Online and from the Drink Digital Marketing Meetup. So hi Amy and hi Pete.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
All right, first things first. I'm going to talk about you, Pete. So tell us how you got into design.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, I've always sort of done creative stuff, either as a job or in my spare time. So it's always something, it's sort of a natural thing for me. But I said that I don't think anyone's naturally creative. It's something that we work at. So, for me, it was just a natural process. Every job I've done has been a creative one. I think Picasso said that every child is an artist, but the problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. Never been a problem for me. But I think it's all true. We're all creative, and we work with lots of creative people at the Digital Maze. But I've sort of done it all. I've worked in fashion, and in print and in web design, but I get bored very easily. So creative content was the one about 7 years ago when I started at Boom. It was the one that really grabbed my attention. Back then, Neomam and Verve Search and others were doing really exciting creative stuff, and we wanted to be a part of that. So it's that drive to try new things and sort of keep your finger on the pulse that makes me want to create exciting and creative content every day. We're just doing that every day, basically.
So Amy, how long have you been at Boom / the Digital Maze, and how did you get started in outreach and digital PR?
I started at Boom in late 2016, so I'm coming up for 6 years now. Like Pete, I've always been sort of the creative type. I was always drawing as a kid, and I actually went to uni to study art. Decided to leave that though, but I also had quite an interest in business development and sales, so I started doing that after university, and being able to combine the two, I sort of moved through into marketing and started doing the outreach side of it. It was just like a really natural fit, and that combination of being able to do creative stuff whilst also working on a sort of very business development marketing side of the business was really sort of a good combination for me. It works really well.
Awesome. Thank you both for that. So I'm going to jump into some questions then. So, when we talk about creative content, in your mind, what exactly are we talking about here? There's many ways there's many different names for this, digital PR, creative content, all that kind of stuff. In your mind, what is that? And I guess it's not just graphic design, it's much more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think if our listeners were listening last time, they'll have heard James talk about what design is. So I think he said that design is art with science, basically, but he probably used better words in the right order, unlike me. Content is that, but more, it's something that has sort of social appeal as well. Content is designed to share, and obviously all the metrics that we have in there, so links and brand awareness, creating memorable, memeable design, the stuff that folks just want to share and talk about.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of psychology involved in it, especially in creative content. Like, humans are quite visual creatures, and you'll enjoy learning things visually more so than sort of in written text. So based on that, you're sort of more likely to share it as a result as well. And it gives you a bit more opportunity to sort of be a bit more holistic in what you're doing, do a bit of storytelling. You get to connect with your audience slightly differently to how you would if you were doing it in written content. Graphic design is a lot of science, like James said, and Pete said. So, yeah.
So what's the benefits of creative content to a business? Obviously there is a benefit to the audience, but what does a business get out of it?
It can be one of the sort of best ways, I think, to build quite a large number of quality, credible links. You can sort of try and do it without the creative content, but ultimately, if you've got a piece of creative content that gets picked up by big websites, other bigger websites can pick up that, so you can earn like organic links through the sharing of your creative content. So it's a really good way to get a lot of links if something really takes off. And you've got sort of more opportunity to build brand awareness off-site, and you can drive traffic through those links that you get. I'm a bit obsessed with links. It's very much the case of links give me life. I often compare it, if I've ever done interviews with anyone, I've always compared it to like a search and rescue dog. If I'm not finding links or getting links, I get a bit upset and sad. So yeah.
For anyone listening, we've got our own Slack channel, which is called Links All, and it's basically just Amy posting all the links for our clients, which is great to see.
We have a link out, you can tell.
Yeah, very, very link proud. But yeah, like the quality backlinks are really, really good for. It's a trust signal, so building trust with Google and other search engines. If they see that other credible websites are sharing your content and linking back to your website, it's a very sort of good indicator that your website is to be trusted as well. So you can sort of build the authority based around that.
I think as well, creating regular, engaging and informative content is crucial to your site's success, because it's not really something you can try once and say, oh, that was fun, next. It's a part of how you engage with your audience and how you want your brand voice to be heard as much as anything as well.
Yeah, and you've also got the upshot as well. If you've got unique visual assets on your website, you have a better chance of ranking in image search as well. So that's another way that you can generate leads to your website, links to your website, rather than just purely based on text and copy. You have another way in to organic link building.
No, it sounds good. I mean, obviously, there's not many things in marketing that can benefit so many things at once. This is benefiting your SEO, with your link building, brand awareness. You get a lot of bang for your buck with creative content, digital PR, whichever one you want to call it. Having heard what you've just said, would it be fair to say that you can't necessarily guarantee a result or a link or whatever the metric we're trying to track here would be?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be shot down by Wayne when he is this, I imagine, but I don't think there's much in SEO that you can guarantee results. But if you've got a better team and good processes, experience, you've got a better chance at success. A few years back, we tried to sort of really get on top of return on investment and figure out, what guarantees we could offer. And we sort of worked out we were gaining an average of about 9 quality links per campaign. That's not counting all those sort of things. And the campaign would last about 2 or 3 months. After that, we would stop. But creative content, really good creative content, lasts forever. As Amy just said, it's another sort of avenue that will sit there forever, and often continues to pick up links long after outreach. But we're not stabbing in the dark here. So we have got a great team behind us, and we have our own success strategy on the back of this research we did a few years back, where each campaign idea, once we've sort of settled on an idea, we feed it into a scoring system against certain metrics. For example, how simple is this content? Can it be explained in a sentence? Can it be explained in an email subject line to help with outreach? How much of emotional response will this trigger? How memorable will it be? Is it relevant? There's budget and timing and all sorts of everything. So we do everything we can do to make sure our campaign has the best chance of success by using that scoring system. So yeah, no guarantees, but certainly with a good team and a good process and our sort of success strategy scoring system, we're on to a good start.
Yeah, like Pete said, passion for what you're doing really does count for a lot. Especially in link building, it's really not easy. Some people might think that it's just a case of reaching out to people, you're effectively sales. But you've really got to want to do it, and you've really got to be able to take the knockbacks, because that can be really demoralizing. So if you're not passionate about what you're doing, or you're sort of not fully invested in what it is you're essentially selling, you're not going to get the results that you want. So it's really important that you are passionate about what you're doing, and that can sort of lead to the success. It's just how it is.
I think that's a really great point, Amy. So from sort of a marketing director point of view, how does creative content feed into that main marketing strategy?
Like I said previously, the main focus is about building quality backlinks that are going to improve trust with search engines, and that trust can then lead to improving authority. So you'll also drive traffic, you'll increase brand awareness, and as that authority improves with search engines, you'll start to see that your rankings improve as well. So therefore, when people are searching for things, you're higher up in the search engine, in the search results. It's all about taking from different areas and bringing it all into one sort of centralized, wider SEO strategy.
I think you also, in researching, briefs and trying to find ideas within your client sector, you really get to understand their brand probably more than you would if you were just working as an account manager. It could take, months for that to sort of, you understand their brand and their audience. But when you really have to come up with, hundreds of ideas, you're doing brainwriting and trying to come up with briefs and stuff, and you're researching what your brand's audience will be into, I think you tend to find that you understand them better, which obviously can then end up with more opportunities and ultimately more success, really, in any piece that you end up running.
Yeah, and the other thing as well, with creative content, it can be multifunctional if it's done properly. So visual content that you'd use for building links, you could also use it as part of your social media strategy. You could then use it as part of your email marketing plan if you've got one. So there is an element of value for money in using creative content on your website, because it can be so multifaceted as far as your overall marketing strategy goes.
That's brilliant. So if your business is sort of less sexy than others and typically, classed as almost like a boring business, is that a problem when it comes to making creative content?
What's a boring business then?
Trying to get me into trouble now, Pete.
Pete. What about, let's take doors.
Obviously, boring is boring, but we've got great at working for these less sexy businesses, less sexy sectors. We've just got a lot of experience with it. I think we, back in the day, you do an infographic on, let's say again, doors, and you'd exhaust all that boring content pretty quickly, and you realise that nobody's interested. So you have to chunk it up. So if your company does sell doors, they're great and useful, and there's a lot of content that can be written about that. But when we're talking about creative content, there's not a lot very interesting about doors. I think we've done it all, but the houses in which you put your doors, there's lots of opportunities for creative content there, whether it's been home, family, pets. You've really got to chunk it up and think about the audience again. People don't buy doors for doors' sake. They buy them to make their homes a better, more attractive, more interesting place. And so you have to really tap into that. Even the most boring business, everyone has a story, and every business has an audience. So if you can tap into that and you're authentic and fun and informative, then that's a win for me. There are no boring businesses. There are only boring people.
Yeah, I think one of the big things as well with creative content is you've got to be really willing to sort of be out of the box and maybe a bit daring with what it is you're putting it out there. It can be sort of difficult for people to sort of see beyond their sort of what they're selling, but if you analyse the audience data and really dig deep into the demographic of the people that are buying from you and visiting your website, you'll find that they're not just interested in what it is you're selling. They've got a whole sort of plethora of different things that they'll be visiting on the internet. So if you can tap into that sort of thing as well, you know that you're going to be attracting the right audiences back to your website with your content, drawing them into your products.
100%. And we say boring, obviously tongue in cheek, and I do believe what you say. You know, there is content to be made for all types of businesses, no matter what they do. And it's all working towards that same goal of brand awareness, link generation, all that kind of stuff. And it's a service that, you know, I think we're super, super impressed about. And it's probably one we don't shout about quite enough. But when we do, and we get a question about it, typically the question is, you know, what kind of budget do I need to allocate to my creative content? And often it's the first time they're exploring this, so it can appear quite overwhelming to them. You have to explain all the benefits. But in your mind, if I was to bring you a new client, you know, what sort of budget would you like to see from that to make sure you can do a great job of it?
How much you got? You know, I could do something on Fiverr. You know, it's classic SEO answer. It depends, doesn't it? We've had amazing success on stuff that we've spent, you know, a couple of hours on, and we've had amazing success at stuff, you know, that you could spend a grand on it, you could spend 10 grand on it, you could spend more. It does depend on not just on what you want to create, because you could do an interactive piece which, you know, could take weeks to build, and then there's all the proofing, the breaking, as we like to call it, make sure it's working properly. So that could be a huge piece, or it could be artwork, which, you know, can take less time. As long as you've got the right brief and the right idea, you can come up with, you know, creative content really easily. And data-led stuff as well. So if you've got a unique piece of data out there, and it can be on anything. I mean, we've measured the air in crisps, you know, in packets of crisps, and it did really well. And the data took, you know, half a day to get, and, you know, it did really, really well. So they all have different entry points when it comes to how much does it cost, and again, how much outreach you do. But it really does depend. You can spend a little and spend a lot. It depends on the sort of ideas you're after and the format, really. I think there are entry points for everybody.
Yeah, I think you've also got to consider as well whether you're doing it on retainer or doing it as an ad hoc job. If you've done it on retainer, for example, you've got the opportunity to come back to it at a later date, whereas you wouldn't necessarily have that with an ad hoc job. So if you're coming back to it at a later date, we've done it in the past with pieces. If you're coming back to it because it's not worked very well the first time around, you can then push it out again just to sort of see if there's any more relevancy at this point. And likewise, if you've had a piece that did really well initially, you might want to try and sort of have a second wave of success with it. So yeah, there is a difference in between, between the retainer and ad hoc jobs. It just depends how you want to approach it, really.
That was good. Good answer. So next time somebody comes to me, I'm going to go, how much you got? No, like you say, I mean, what I got from that personally was it depends on how ambitious the client wants to be. It depends how big they want it to make, want it to be interactive, want it to be visual, or even written. It really does depend, and it doesn't necessarily mean that more budget means more success either. But I think the more pieces you can do, correct me if I'm wrong, the more experimentation you can do, you can find what lands best over time. And once you've got that formula, you know, you kind of golden from there.
Yeah, it can be a case of like, I'm aware of other companies where they've charged upwards of like 20 grand for one piece, whereas that could have essentially been 3 or 4 pieces. That it just means that you've got the opportunity to like make multiple hits. So there's a good chance that one of them will be successful, whereas that one that's you've spent 20 grand on may flop and you're screwed, for want of a better term. So yeah, there's definite differences in terms of how much you spend and what you want out of it as well.
So it's time for pretty much everyone's favourite part, the quick fire round. So what is your favourite piece of content that you've worked on to date?
Ooh, for me, it has to be the Simpsons Pantone one. Again, initially it flopped, but we revisited it at a later date. It took off massively, and we even ended up with Pantone themselves getting involved in that one. So that was a real highlight. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, we looked at, obviously the Simpsons predict everything, so we tried to predict the next Pantone colour of the year, and it turns out that if you look at the Simpsons living room, they've managed to predict every Pantone colour of the year for like the last 10 years, which was absolutely not, expected. But once you started looking at it, you're like, oh my God, they've done it again. And it tied in really nicely with the one, I think it was a couple of years ago now, the colour of the year, and it was it Marge's hair, and they had Simpsons yellow one year as well, and it just kept going, didn't it?
The year that we actually put it out there and the year it took off, we got the colour sort of right with that one, and then they did it again, didn't they? And that was Marge's hair the following year. So we ended up having like the second and third wave with that one. It was really good.
There's a screenshot that Wayne likes to send me occasionally where I said to her, Simpsons yellow, with fingers crossed the night before. The next day it was yellow, and we were like, let's go.
It's a good point you just said there, Amy, about, pieces resurfacing over years. I've seen plenty of screenshots where, we've got a graph dating back to even 2014, 15 in some cases, and that sort of upward curve of just still getting links 5 years later, 6 years later, 7 years later. Create sort of evergreen, really relevant content like that. I mean, I'm not saying £5,000 is not a lot of money or how much you charge for that piece of content, but for something that can potentially work over the next 5, 6, 7 years, if you get the content right, like my word, that's some investment, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really important to sort of look at the long-term value of it, rather than I'm about to spend £5,000 right now. I want such and such results right now. The long-term value of creative content is, well, the evidence is there. It's like not just for us; it'll be for anybody that's producing it. Like there's definite value, long-term value, in considering creative content for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped in there. Your favourite piece, Pete, I think it was.
Yeah, it's one we've done recently. Actually, it was me and Wayne like stealing ideas, basically, but we still like artists. Is this?
Hey, if you come to drink, you'll know exactly what people.
I think that was the last one, wasn't it? So we find bits and bobs here and there, and finding these things is knowing who to follow on Twitter, what newsletters to look at, and whatever. And you'll see something occasionally, you'll think, oh, this would be a great piece of content. Now, as long as you just don't nick it and make it your own, that's fine. So we found on Twitter a chap called Trung Fan, which you may know. He's just a source of so much information. He likes threads and lists, and so he's a man after my own heart here. And he had a list of unusual product origins of companies. So he listed a few, like Samsung. They started by selling fish in a market, and Lego didn't start with blocks. They started by they made a little sort of wooden duck toy. And there were 4 or 5 on this list, and it really sort of inspired me to go and look for more. So we went and we found loads more, and we just created like tiny little pieces of art based on them. So we drew them and we stuck their logo on there, and it was a really simple piece, but because it was so surprising and interesting, it's done really well, and it's still doing well. So, and that's quite a recent one we've done. But anything that's unusual and surprising, it tends to do well. And yeah, we're happy to say we stole the nugget of that idea from somebody else, but made it our own.
Yeah, the visuals on that one have gone down particularly well on social. And like you say, I think because you kept it simple and straightforward, it's made it really shareable on social. So that's done really well there. Just
about to say the visuals for that were really cool. If we had a YouTube video for this, I'd be saying we'll ping it on screen now, but we can't. And we've got the links or Slack channel to back up the fact that it is working, because I think every, or maybe even 2 or 3 times a day, Amy will post a link and it's normally that article, so that is fine at the minute, which is good. So
which always makes it a favourite.
Well, yeah, it's done well. That's not, we're not being biased towards that, but definitely not. Favourite type of content to work with?
As I just said, anything surprising or unusual. I like to, go on my Reddit lists and follow people on Twitter who are unusual and strange and find these weird things, weird customs around the world, that sort of thing. Anything that's just a little bit surprising. I think surprise is one of the key sort of factors in our success scoring strategy, is that, if you can shock and delight people, that sort of thing for me is where I like to create stuff. So, and then it's we get to draw it as well. Well, I get to draw it, so but as long as it's simple and it has that initial sort of surprise and delight, you can create loads. So for me, that's the sort of stuff I like doing.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the same boat really. I'm very much into the artwork-based content, and I think for me, it's probably the best way to showcase the personality of a brand as well. And if you can do something that's a bit sort of out of the box, and it just makes you a little bit more memorable, and it's definitely the type that I get most excited about when it comes to outreach, for sure.
Awesome.
So we know what you like working with, but what's your pet peeve when it comes to creative content?
Ooh. I think one of the worst, and one that we've actually came across with the piece of content that Pete was just talking about, is when websites will take your content and they'll alter it, or they'll put their own brand on it and don't credit you as the original artist or like the company for the original artwork. That's really frustrating. Yeah, and there's been a few occasions in the past where we've reached out to publications and you get no response, and you know that they've seen what you've produced, but they then produce their own version of it just a few weeks later.
That is stealing.
There's no artistry involved there.
So, to keep it positive, do we take it as flattery? Yeah, maybe, but yeah, that's really annoying.
And what about you, Pete? What's your pet peeve?
Exactly that. But sharing work but not crediting, not linking is incredibly frustrating. So that's number one for me. But also it's the jealousy of seeing other amazing agencies doing stuff, and you think, we were talking about that 2 months ago and we forgot about it, or sometimes not even that, just seeing something and think, I wish I'd have thought of that. That looks really good. So I guess it's a positive thing. There are a lot of good folk out there creating great content, and it's a source of inspiration as well. But sometimes you do feel a bit miffed when someone else has done something awesome, especially if you had discussed it with somebody a while back and just forgot about it, or maybe didn't have the right client or something. That sort of thing.
Yeah. No, there's some great work out there. I mean, I follow quite a few sort of digital PR chats or profiles, whatever you want to call them, on Twitter, just share examples all day, and it's some of it's really cool. But you've got to wait for the client to land. Well, in our case as well, so you've got to wait for the client, then you can flex. Okay, cool. So if a business, in fact, rewind, what is one piece of advice to a business looking to implement creative content in their marketing strategy? What advice would you give them people?
I'd say if you've got a story to tell or interesting data, you can make content, but you've got to understand what good content is. So I would say, and we've just touched on it again, it is subscribe to the right sort of people, the right sort of newsletters. Get looking for great pieces of content. Subscribe to this podcast, etc. Basically, see who's making good content and see what good content looks like. Obviously, you need to know whether it's been successful or not, but know that everyone's got a story. So any business can create content. You just have to know how to make that content good.
Yeah, I think for me, it's creative content is great on your website, but it's very rarely going to take off on its own. You've also got to consider doing some outreach as well. You've got to be prepared to put it out there and proactively sort of seek exposure for it. It's very rare that you'll sort of see a piece of creative content that's out there without that happening first. And I think the other thing as well is, like, you've got to be realistic. Like, don't expect to go viral, as some people ask. While it happens sometimes, the internet is a massive place. You've got sort of everyone and their dog vying for that space. So, yeah, though you can have success with a piece, going viral is not always going to happen.
I'm just trying to think if I've ever
going viral. Yes, I suppose it can be a measure of success, but it doesn't. Whether you're viral or if one doesn't go viral doesn't mean that it's been unsuccessful. And I think sometimes, I imagine in a lot of board meetings, people talk about, well, if it's not viral, it's not worked. That's just not really the case at all.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Viral can mean so many things, can't it? I mean, on social, a lot of the success we have is not on social media. It will appear there if it's done particularly well, but we've had great pieces of content that have got loads of links that I don't know if you would call it viral. Honestly, it's a different metric, I think, but it is definitely a buzzword, isn't it?
Yeah, you made a good point about what you see on social. Like you'll see people saying, "Oh, this got like 3,000 links and blah blah, this, that, and the other," and it's like that's probably one creative piece of content that they've done out of 200. So
yeah,
it's important to sort of measure the quality of what you're getting, as opposed to just what you're seeing on social media, because it's not realistic.
So
I would agree with Amy saying outreach is key, because I've tried outreaching and I'm awful at it and I hate it and I don't like it when people say nasty things to me. So if you think you can do it yourself, well, you have to be a braver man than me. Outreach is definitely key. You can have a great piece of content, but unless you're going to get it out there, no one's going to see it. It ain't going to happen. You aren't going to go viral. So yeah. Hi, Amy.
So obviously
sorry, I was just going to say, unless you've got like a really, really active website anyway that's got like millions of visitors every month, there's a good chance that you're going to need outreach to get anything out there and sort of make it known to other publications, for sure.
So obviously not every piece, unfortunately, isn't going to be a success. So what's your sort of process for dealing with a piece of content that flops that you really believed in?
Firstly, as we've already touched on, just try not to beat yourself up about it, because it can be so destructive for sort of moving forward. So you've got to not beat yourself up about it, and just remember that it's not set in stone either. Like, you can make amends to the content itself, or you can reassess the outreach approach that you're taking. Like, you can look at the websites that you're targeting, and look at like how you're selling it as well. So keep an eye on like the open rates of your emails, split test subject lines of your outreach emails, for example, and maybe get a little bit more creative with how you're doing your outreach. So see if you can get some sort of buzz on social media first. Reach out to sort of influencers, well, not necessarily even influencers, but like pages that will appreciate your content and it's a quick share for them. If you can sort of generate some buzz that way, that's great. It can simply come down to timing as well, like with the Simpsons Pantone piece. It might be just a case of waiting for a more appropriate time to do the outreach and just be sort of ready to go when that moment arises.
Yeah, I think that's sort of one side of it, and you should definitely not give up on a piece of content if you think you've just not given it its due chance, sort of thing. All those things are right, but you also need to know when to stop and move on. So if you've exhausted all those things and you think there's just nothing left in the sort of outreach or different angle or anything like that, it's always a good idea to sort of know when to stop and move on. And that's what we talked about earlier with budget. If you've got enough budget for 6 ideas instead of just one, all your eggs aren't in the same basket, you can move on to the next idea. So, you don't want to waste the client budget flogging the dead horse. You've got to make sure that you can crack on with the next. And, not every idea, not every campaign is going to work. Don't believe social media. Don't believe all these agencies that just say, I've got 1,000 links. I think Amy said this earlier, but they have their failures as well, and it does happen. So be ready to move on is what I'd say. Be prepared to move on and make sure you've got enough ideas of a different sort of tact, different angle, so that you're ready and waiting with your next piece.
No, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Well, look, I honestly believe we've got, you know, one of the best teams available for this kind of stuff. But we all do get creative block. We're not going to shy away from that. So when you do get it, you know, what helps you get past that?
I think for me, it's about not forcing it. Don't force it, because you'll just end up with something that's really mediocre. Take a step back and come back to it later. And like you said, the last thing you want to do is waste the client's money while your sort of brain spills out everywhere. Maybe even sort of engage like colleagues, not even colleagues necessarily that are involved in the creative process, but collaboration and like as a team effort can be really useful for sort of creating idea sparks. The same as brainwriting, really, where you just sort of jot down a few different ideas with a few members of the team, and just immerse yourself in like creative things, and follow like news feeds that are creative, sign up to newsletters, visit inspiring places. Even making your own art can be really inspiring from a content point of view. So yeah, just do things that are going to sort of inspire your creativity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Collaboration is one of the best places to sort of kickstart your own brain into gear. So make sure that you've got that space set up, whether it's on Slack or, you know, you've got a close team that you can talk to and say, you know, I'm really struggling with this, or just say, you know, can we all just have a chat about it? Talking through ideas is the best way to sort of start having ideas again. I actually wrote a blog post on this on the Boom blog. Maybe we could share that later. You know, just step outside, literally go outside and do something different. Find a new road that you've not walked down before. Start observing things and just let your brain just relax. Just you have to stop focusing. The worst time for an idea, it is when you've got none. Basically, you know, if you have to come up with 1,000 ideas and you just can't do it, there's no point trying to force it. So get out and do something. Collecting is supposed to be really, really good for your brain as well. So I do something with my kids, Pokemon Go. I know it's really nerdy, but you're just switching off. You're walking around, you're going down, you know, a different road or whatever to collect Pokemon, and it really just switches you off. And there are lots of other things you can do. There are like nature collecting apps, so you can sort of scan things. So yeah, go outside, exercise, try something new. Definitely go and do some art. If you're that way inclined, I suppose if you're creative, you would be. Try writing, but just do something that you wouldn't normally do. Just let your brain totally try something else and switch off.
I think that's fantastic advice. So our penultimate question is, to the untrained eye, it might seem like guesswork, but how do you, as experts, gauge if a piece of content is likely to work?
Oh, it's important to reiterate, there is no guarantee that it will. Just a bit of a disclaimer in there.
Even if we do it?
I'm willing to admit that it doesn't always work. But yeah, like experience does count for a lot as well. You come to learn the types of websites, the type of content that will work on those websites, like the websites that aren't receptive and the websites that are. Keep an eye on sort of trends and what's out there at the moment as well. That's really important, especially if you've got a timed piece. Previous successes with similar content as well, whether we're looking at our own or other agencies that have created content, like we can see what is likely to take off and what isn't. Yeah.
I think guesswork, like you said in the question, is the key thing here. You can't leave it to guesswork. There are flukes out there, certainly, where, you know, even we've sort of said, oh, let's try this or whatever. But we always make sure that, you know, that's done on the strictest budget if we're going to be a bit risky. But you can't leave it to guesswork. You have to have a process. And I know how boring processes can be, and not everyone wants to stick to them. But like I mentioned earlier, our content scoring strategy, every idea that gets to a point where I think, well, this has legs maybe, still has to run through this scoring strategy. And I think we said if it falls below 70% on the scoring strategy, we're not going to go ahead with it. Doesn't matter how your gut feels about it; it's failed on already before it's gone out. So make sure you've got a scoring strategy. Make sure you've got a process for scoring potential campaigns before they go out there, because you might love it and everyone on your team might love it, but the people at the Daily Mail are horrible, and they'll lay into it. I mean, actually, if it gets on the Daily Mail, you've done well. So I don't know what
all the terrible newspapers are available.
I'll read the Daily Mail. So you just got to make sure you have a scoring strategy. You can't leave it to guesswork. You need to run every idea you have through that. I'm not talking about every little sort of nugget of an idea that you have. When you've gone through your brainwriting process, whatever, and you've identified 50 ideas, don't run them through a process. Run the top 3 or 4 that you all decide, this might have legs. Get that through a strategy. See what score comes out the other end, and you will find that, again, no guarantee of success, but you will have a better chance of success if you're at least critiquing your own stuff before it goes out.
I just think there's probably a separate podcast or separate conversation podcast on the process of going from point A, receiving a brief, to point B of actually launching it. And because all that brainwriting stuff, all the scoring, these sort of 100 ideas, get rid of 97, I think it is, or what? Is it 97?
Be.
Well, yeah, exactly. You do all that.
I'd be glad to come back. Are you inviting me back already?
I'm inviting you back, Peter. But yeah, that process, there's loads to be spoken about on that, and I think it's a good process, and it's been iterated upon over many years by the sounds of it, and it's we've landed where we are now, and we get some great results for customers. So yeah, I think there's definitely a conversation to be had there.
Brilliant. And obviously this episode's been about creative content, but we know what the listeners have come to find out, and it's Pete, what's your favourite biscuit?
Well, I'm going to give a very creative content-like answer here, and I'm going to shock you all and surprise you all and get people talking, because I'm going to choose non-biscuit Jaffa cake, which, again, people in the Daily Mail, if you would say that's the UK's favourite biscuit, they'd be talking. You'd get some links there. So yeah, Jaffa cake evokes a reaction, and folk will remember it.
It's wrong, but okay.
It's the perfect biscuit.
Is it a biscuit though?
It is a biscuit.
It's not a biscuit.
I'm not going to wade into this debate. Look, I think we'll leave it there, but thank you, Amy. Thank you, Pete. Been really, really good talking to you both. Anybody listening, if you are interested in creative content, or if it just piques your interest based on what we've spoken about today, I'd urge you to visit our website, which is boom-online.co.uk. There is a creative content page nested under the content marketing area, and there's loads of good examples there, ranging different sectors, different types of content that actually Pete and Amy have spearheaded. So yeah, I would urge you to go and look at that. But thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Perfect.
Cut. That was good.